Call the meeting to order, please. Aitzquel, CM not CAA, Aitzquelawan, Selamnala. I'd like to acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on the lands of the Halkomeetum speaking people, specifically the Kwamutsun village. The Board of Education is honored to be able to collaboratively walk beside the Kwamutsun, Malahats, Basses, Halalt, Penelakits, Timanis, and Layaks peoples who have cared for this land for thousands of years. May we walk gently on the ceded and unceded territories of their lands as we work together to lift up the Hahasana. So before we adopt the agenda, folks, we have some additions. I'd like to add 8.1.2, Principal, Vice Principal update. I'd like to add 9.1.4, federal election. And 9.2.2, capital bylaw. I'm assuming the one for you, Tim? That's it? I thought yours?
That's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Thank you. Oh, sorry. Moved by trustee Lise, seconded by trustee Sousa. All those in favor? Thank you, folks. Approval of the consent agenda. Moved by Joe, seconded by trustee Lise. All those in favor? Thank you. Minutes of the March 4th, 2025 open board meeting. Moved by trustee Lise, seconded by trustee Croft. All those in favor? No recognition of delegations. Report of the closed meeting, Mr. Sessions.
The board met in closed session and completed the session prior to this open meeting. There were multiple personnel items, facility items, contract items, and bargaining update.
Thank you. Superintendent of schools.
Thank you, through your chair. I'll start off here at 8.11, personnel and communication process for this principal, vice principal transfers for 2025-2026. We are in discussion presently around those assignments, and announcements will be made before the end of April so that we're meeting contractual requirements to inform our district employees. So, thank you. Okay, 8.1.2. I'm going to have a couple handouts here. Again, what you're looking at is present assignments. I'll pass these this way and those that way. Present assignments for principals and vice principals. Notes in orange. We've got a leave situation present with the International Student Program, and so what we've done is reassigned Vice Principal Darren Hart to be acting District Vice Principal for International Student Programs. So he's at Kwamutsun School, and from the Vice Principal pool, a teacher at Kwamutsun School, Kim Magnan, is in the pool, and she's been elevated to acting Vice Principal at Kwamutsun until the return of the incumbent. So, thank you.
Thank you for the information.
Okay, board information. There's a bit of notes here. First of all, National Day of Mourning, April 28th, 2025. Flags of schools across the district and the school district office will fly at half-mast on April 28th in recognition of the National Day of Mourning, which honors those who were injured or killed in workplace accidents and renews our commitment to improving the health and safety of our schools and our workplaces. Earth Day, April 22nd, 2025, and we have on display here. The school district is committed to continue to work on our journey towards environmental sustainability. In recent years, the board declared a climate emergency and established a climate action committee that developed the following 4 goals: environmental stewardship, education and advocacy, honoring Indigenous teachings, and creating sustainable environments. So this year, the District Climate Action Advisory Committee invited schools in the district to participate in water awareness initiatives during the month of March. World Water Day recognized on March 22nd by the United Nations each year, and the month of March. Walksis in Halkominum is the time of year when the Wuxus, the frog, returns to sing songs of the earth, the walking up, rebirth, and the warm spring rains. And the display, the infographic that you see here, was provided to our schools to create ideas surrounding the various themes of water and watershed education. It offered access points and ideas for deeper learning about water, both locally and throughout the world. So thank you to our schools for the work on that. National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and Two-Spirited People, also known as Red Dress Day, is May 5th, 2025. And that's just before the next board meeting, so we're making sure that everybody is aware of this now. Recognizing upcoming National Day of Awareness for Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls and Two-Spirited People on May 5th, 2025. There's also known as Red Dress Day, as I noted, where red dress is worn or red clothing is displayed to honor and remember missing and murdered Indigenous women, girls, and Two-Spirited People. So that's coming up, an important date there. 2024-2025 graduation district year-end events as attached. What you'll see on page 14 of the agenda package is a revised list of graduation and year-end events. I've been told that you may see a further update just as things change, but apparently you're used to that. So the list has been updated to reflect the dates, times, and most locations for the district scholarship judging, and the secondary schools have now been set. So that's in your package. Sharing the district scholarship allocation to secondary schools and wildcards. So you see those dates and times there, as well as the number of scholarships. For a total of 76 district scholarships. And further updates on the list of graduations and year-end events in your agenda package is location of the Cowichan Secondary walk-up / grad ceremony has been changed to the Cowichan Community Center Arena. Superintendent's updates, acknowledgement and appreciation. I'd just like to thank all those staff members who worked during spring break, including those from payroll, finance, human resources, operations, and technology. I know that there were other individuals as well that were in making sure that they were prepared for the final 3 months here before the summer break. Administrative Professionals Day is on April 23rd. It's a day to acknowledge the contribution of the district administrative support staff, which keeps the learning community operating smoothly. So thank you to those individuals. I look forward to participating in those events through the week. And also next month, School Principals Day is celebrated annually on May 1st to recognize the importance of principals and vice principals for elementary to high school and all the work they do for the betterment of our schools. So thank you for your strong leadership there. Autism Awareness Month in April was a month to identify the contributions, challenges, and successes of people with autism. World Autism Day. Awareness Day is on April 2nd. So tomorrow, April 2nd, is a day to come together to raise awareness about autism and a condition that many Canadians have. So I'll get through this. Provincial assessments, literacy and numeracy, grade 10 assessments, and literacy, grade 12 assessments. I think this has been noted before, but spring session, This spring, grade 10 and 12 assessment administration session dates are April 7th through the 11th, 2025. The June assessment dates are June 2nd through the 6th. And these are provincial assessments that assess student proficiency in literacy and numeracy. They are graduation requirements, and students take these assessments in their grade 10 and 12 year. BC Student Learning Survey, as a reminder then that the 2024-2025 Student Learning Survey are available online from January 6th to May 2nd, 2025 for students and parents in grades 4, 7, 10, and 12, and all staff in BC public schools. And the evidence collected from these surveys informs decisions at the district level. So I encourage folks to get online and fill out the surveys there. You'll also see coming up in the photos here, Lake Cowichan School had the pleasure of welcoming Naomi, who taught lacrosse to their students. Lacrosse, known as the Creators Game, holds deep cultural significance as a traditional sport of many Indigenous nations, played for healing, community building, and connection. And they were also fortunate to have some of their grade 11 leadership students step up to support the sessions, helping to engage and encourage their peers. And it was a fantastic opportunity for students to develop their skills while also learning about the cultural importance of lacrosse as more than just a game. It's a way to bring people together. So I appreciate that. Another photo here that we have at the Junior Regional Robotics, February 28th. Cowichan Valley Schools gathered for the Junior Regional Robotics competition put on by the District Career Education Team. Students participated in fun, hands-on activities and challenges that incorporated coding, problem solving, and creative thinking. Congratulations to all the competitors, and a big thank you to the teachers who supported these clubs in the schools. So it looks like it was a great event. Senior robotics competition, Thursday, March 13th, saw students from Francis Kelsey Secondary, Cowichan Secondary School, take on the challenge of senior robotics competition, where students battled it out with their own creative robots designs, and in a specially designed arena. So you can see the photos as well. Robots collected foam balls and hurled them at the opposing team's snowman, while other robots worked to collect and stack blocks into towers. Winning the bronze were Alex Evans, Shunei Lida, Yicheng Liu, and Kyle Nisbet. Winning silver were Luke Doran, Logan Robillard, and Jacob Farquharson. And winning gold were Christopher Tuber and Will Baker. So congratulations to all the competitors and coaches, Christine Hoffman and Wayne Newman, and special thanks to Josh Page for helping to organize and judge the competition. Also, within the careers update, wildfire suppression courses, Cowichan Careers Department has partnered with the BC Wildfire Services, Cobble Hill Base, to run a 2 wildfire suppression course for our students in early April. And these courses will provide the necessary training for employment on a fire suppression crew. So, very important work there. Skills Canada regionals, results, and provincial competition. Photos from this. Cowichan Valley School District continues to do well in Skills Canada regional events. We had students compete at both the Mid-Island and South Island regionals this year. Congratulations to the following students for medaling at the Mid-Island regionals. Damian Sutton placed gold in carpentry. Becky Delala placed gold in hairdressing. Maya Bailey placed silver in hairdressing. And congratulations to the following students for medaling in the South Island regionals. Luke Banks placed gold in automotive. Cade Antoniuk placed silver in automotive. Ginger Dan placed bronze in automotive. Griffin Kavoski placed silver in electronics. Oliver Hawaii placed bronze in electronics, and Nathan Day placed gold in electrical wiring. So congratulations to those students. We will have 5 competitors representing the Cowichan Valley School District advancing to the Skills Canada Provincials. Skills competition on April 16th in Abbotsford. So we support those students and congratulations to them. Students who place gold in this event will advance to the Nationals in Regina, Saskatchewan on May 29th and 30th. So more steps for our students. Catalyst update, district chess tournament, April 10th, coming up here, 8:30 to 2 o'clock at George Bonner Elementary for students in grade 2 through 12. And Young Authors, May 1st, the Young Authors Conference, 8:30 to 4 p.m. at Vancouver Island University, Cowichan campus, and at Cowichan Secondary. So that's important piece to note there. Another event for inclusive education and inclusive event. BC Blind School Sports. The BC Blind School Sports Beep Ball will be held at École Mount Provost in May and June. Date is yet to be determined and more information is to come on that, but it sounds exciting. Dates for the 2SL GBTQIA+ recognition. At the Cowichan Valley School District, we want to take the time to acknowledge those in our schools who are part of the 2SL GBTQIA+ community. There are some upcoming dates for us to celebrate and recognize and see the 2SL GBTQIA+ students, staff, families, neighbors, and friends in our classes, schools, and community. Every person deserves to feel safe and respected for who they are. So International Trans Day of Visibility was yesterday, March 31st. Was International Trans Day of Visibility, which is intended to recognize and experience the voices of transgender people in our community. We ask ourselves how you can be an active ally for transgendered members of our community. International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, also known as IDAH OBIT, is an annual event observed on May 17th and aims to coordinate international events and raise awareness for the 2S LGBTQIA+ rights violations and stimulates further conversation around rights and rights work that's happening worldwide. So important dates there. Pride Month is the month of June. Cowichan Valley School District celebrates Pride Month as one way to bring awareness to the historic and ongoing marginalization of members of the 2S LGBTQIA+ community, and to acknowledge current attempts to remove protected rights from this group. Pride Month is a reminder to celebrate friends, neighbors, and others whose gender identity, expression, sexual orientation may not match ours. And we can actively work towards creating a sense of safety for all. We're inviting all of us to join Cowichan's School District group at the Cowichan Walk and Festival Pride Parade at the end of June, and the date is yet to be announced. And we will have flags and the banner for all of us to walk behind, so looking forward to participating in that. Again, the Long Service Recognition Tea, attended we were there at the Long Service Recognition Tea on March 13th, where the board recognized the significant work milestones of our employees who had reached 25, 30, and 35 years of service. Again, thank you to our MCs, Assistant Superintendent Reynolds and Assistant Superintendent Olson, for your great job on leading that event. And I'll also recognize Assistant Superintendent Rowan as a recipient for his service in the
Jeffrey Rowan.
Jeffrey Rowan, okay. I wasn't going to say it, but all superintendents meeting So on March 6th, I attended the Ministry All Superintendents meeting in Richmond, and also Department Liaison meeting March 7th, along with the Board Chair and Secretary Treasurer. K. Krishna, Deputy Minister of Education and Childcare, and the Honorable Lisa Baer, Minister of Education and Childcare, providing key updates on government and ministry initiatives. Presentations included topics First Nations education, enhancing student learning, student safety, and addressing cybersecurity. So important for us to be connected with other districts throughout the province. The Vista Spring Conference, thank you to those that were in attendance. So I was able to attend on the Saturday for the Vancouver Island School Trustees Association Spring Conference with trustees in Victoria on the evening of March 7th and on March 8th. Presentation from the school district on school food programming, and the Victoria student-led tour of the newly renovated Victoria High School. So greatly appreciated the opportunity to be there for those events. Non-instructional day, April 14th, 2025 coming up. We'll continue to thread the theme, and I apologize, I have no idea how to pronounce this, so Fix the Days Ahead is a translation through our third non-instructional day. All sessions are being facilitated by our school district staff. Elementary schools will be teaming to allow for enriched conversations focusing on literacy, numeracy in the morning, and school frameworks on enhancing student learning vessels in the afternoon. Secondary schools will come together at the Cowichan Secondary School. The morning will feature a keynote and school-based vessel time, followed by the afternoon of department collaboration across schools. Mental Health Awareness Week, May 5th through the 11th. May 5th through the 11th, 2025 is the Canadian Mental Health Association, CMHA, Mental Health Week. And this year's Mental Health Week theme is Unmasking Mental Health. And finally, I just want to make note that I've had opportunity for school visits. First of all, I've had the pleasure of being able to step over to Alexander Elementary, joining a marvelous student by the name of Bella, who drums students into the school in the morning. It's fantastic. I take my drum over. Bella takes the lead, and I follow her. So I've been over there a couple of times for that. Thoroughly enjoy it, and then listening to the students as they take leadership around the school announcements. So thank you for that. So school, our superintendent, school and classroom visits for the spring. I've been able to attend Mill Bay Elementary and partake in observations and just classroom visits in their school prior to spring break. And then this morning I was at Cobble Hill Elementary. I'm going to be at Alexander Elementary tomorrow, and on Thursday I'll be at Cowichan Secondary. So each school has received a date, and I greatly appreciate the opportunity and to be welcomed to the schools. Thank you, Chair, through you. That's the conclusion of my report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, Secretary Treasurer.
Thank you, Chair. I have quite a bit of financial information today. I want to begin with the year-end projection, and the board are quite familiar with this template that I use, where I look out from a particular date, take payrolls and move them forward at the current trending. I then do some extrapolations around comparing where we're at on absenteeism costs to this point last year, and have some formulas that give me an estimate of where I think those balances will be at the end of the year. So right now we're not showing any variance on the provincial grant from the amended budget. Looking at the February count, it does appear like it will calculate better than what we had originally in the budget, but I haven't brought any surplus in for that yet until I actually see the funding from the ministry, and that should arrive in the next month or so. International program is $103,000, currently above projection. Local education agreement is always flush. It's an in and out. It's a billing to the local nations. Miscellaneous revenues, most of that is tied to registration fees for next year's ISP program, and same as the transportation fees, that's ISP transportation. So rentals is ahead, about $48,000, and interest is still to be allocated out to a few other funds, so I know it will be closer to the $800,000 mark at the end of the year. It's very, very close to budget now at $729. I expect it to, once we distribute that out to various other capital programs that have money in the bank, that'll go down a little bit. So looking at about $244,000 variance to the positive on revenues at this time. I'm thinking that will be higher when the February account gets finalized and announced. Moving down to salaries, not a lot of change from when I last showed this, still within reasonable amounts in relation to the budgets, 57,000 under PVP, about 71 on teachers. That is remarkably close right now on a $44 million budget. So these can change quite significantly when I do the next, the projections get more accurate as we move closer to the end of the year. EAS was looking further away than this, and it's coming back closer to budget. And I think when we see how many individuals had structured their vacation in a different way in relation to the spring break, we'll likely see some adjustment there as well. Clerical, a small positive, USW, small positive. I mean, they're big numbers at 132,000, but not on the number of the budget. It's not a significant variance. And actually doing quite well so far on casual replacements. These are the costs, and this doesn't necessarily always mean that there's fewer days of sick leave. It just means that our costs are down. It could be the TTOCs that are in replacing, or the fact that we don't have enough people to replace education assistants every day. So the costs are down. Extracurricular, you can see that we spent $370. A lot of that comes in service into the later part of the school years when a lot of those activities happen. So the budgets that have been allocated for those will likely start to come in as we move to the end of the year. So $505,000 underspent on salaries on $80 million. Most related to absenteeism. Hope that trends that way, because as we get into discussions on next year's budget, we may be needing to look at narrowing some of those. Stat benefits coming in, all benefits really coming in, $176,000 underspent on $20 million. I'm not seeing, when I look at the individual accounts on services or transportation, any real variances coming. A little bit overspend on rentals and leases. We had to maintain the community center for longer with a delay on Couch and Cutson secondaries opening. So, there was a lease agreement with CBRD for additional space that was in place. And then just really looking at the winter and the utilities, I think it's safe to say we'll be about $200,000 under budget there. Of course, February was cold. But even with that, we were over halfway through the year and only running about $729,000 on a $1.6 million budget. So when we look at all that, total expenditures under right now by about $876,000 on $112 million, which leaves a projected surplus of $1.1 million from the amended budget.
Trustees, questions? No, hearing none. Moving on, Mr. Sandquist.
We'll do another one at March 31st, and that will be brought into the budget cycle as we consider whether to access surplus to help balance. Okay. So the next part here is a PowerPoint, and it's a bit of a story of a journey to our budget position. And I'm doing this for the benefit of our public. The board have seen some of these slides already, and here we go. Let's just load it. I'll move along. There we go. So this is data that has been provided to us from demographers at the Ministry of Education and the province of British Columbia. And what we're seeing on this particular slide is the overall population in the province of BC, because we've all been aware of the enrollment, the number of students has been increasing over time in the province. There's been a need for new schools. And you can see that the overall population of the province has really started to spike in the last few years. There's been significant growth in the last 3 years. But from 1971 to 2023, it's grown by about 2.5 times. And this is the Vancouver Island population. So again, the first number here at the very bottom where it's 411,201, that's 1976. And today in 2024, there's 850,000. So the island's doubled in those decades. And if you've been here or were an early resident on the island, you've seen that on the highway and community, how difficult it is to move around Victoria, the growth in Nanaimo, the growth in the Cowichan Valley, the growth is obvious. So again, trending up. And this is I think this is a really fun one. There's 3 colors on this slide. The first color is green, and that is natural growth, where the births in the province exceed the mortalities. So births exceeding deaths. And those numbers are quite large as you move through the early years, like the 70s and the 80s and 90s. So we're growing just because there's more people being born than are passing away. Blue is people moving to the island from other provinces. They're already in Canada and they're choosing to come, to BC. They're choosing to come to BC for whatever reason. And so they point out to us on this slide, Expo 86 happens and there's this surge in interest in people moving to British Columbia. In this 90s, this is also when we saw the retirement communities start to be built, like Arbutus Ridge and Parksville booms, and you move up to Comox and Courtenay and they're booming around those retirement type of communities. People are choosing to come here. A lot of them are retirement age. People choose to leave and move out to other provinces here in the late 90s and early 2000s. They come back, but not in the same numbers. They really start coming back around 2015, and this is when we start to grow again as a school district in the Cowichan Valley. So we were in decline to 2014. Then the growth period begins, partly due to that in-migration. But look what's happened with those 2 colors I've been showing you. So in 2021, 2022, we don't have any green positive anymore. Mortalities have exceeded births. That's in the province of British Columbia. And in 23-24, we start to see that out-migration, and it's to Alberta. And we saw that here this year and last year a little bit. So I think when we get the 24-25 data, we're going to see that number is larger as an out-migration from people who live in BC moving to other provinces. This district unexpectedly dropped 149 students this year because the migration stopped coming in and the migration started going out. And then look at the big orange spikes. That is immigration policy to the province of British Columbia. So those massive growth for newcomers coming into Canada. Massive. And what's important is that many of those individuals are non-permanent residents or temporarily here. And that was the theory on that, and I'm not speaking to the right or wrong of it. There was thought to be a crisis around workers in the ages of 18 to 64. And you're going to see I can talk about some more demographics about what's happening in our own community around 18 to 64. But there was the thought that you needed to get workers in because there needed to be approximately 64% of the population in that band in order to have a functioning economy. So people moved here. Housing is in shortage. Housing prices soar. We see that here. Schools there isn't enough school capacity. With the newcomers come students. Surrey explodes. Abbotsford, Lower Mainland, Souk. We all see growth as a benefit of that in-migration. So that's changed. In 2022 to 2024, the province of BC grows by 9% in 3 years. Massive growth. And now, with federal immigration targets being reduced, the province is now seeing record highs to near zero growth. So the projections in growth in the province of British Columbia are now zero. That's what the province is projecting. And that's not factoring in how many individuals are here as non-permanent residents who may return to their previous country. So I actually think this data is going to show more of a significant drop overall in provincial enrollment. So this is the school enrollment and the way it changed with the non-permanent resident changes caps. So the province was predicting this line, that school enrollment was just going to continue to grow and grow and grow and grow, and that was based on the immigration policy. When that stopped or changed by the federal government, all of a sudden we're in a provincial enrollment decline. Okay, I'm giving the provincial story. Here we go with this great differential of births versus deaths. And these aren't my slides. I'm sharing what the province has prepared. I don't take responsibility for this data, but the province has their own demographers around this. I have no reason not to trust it because I think it's matching our own experience here. Okay. So the data showing for the first time in the province of British Columbia, we crossed this key demographic threshold. 2022, 2021, births are lower than deaths. And why? Birth rates are completely dropping off. So here we have a slide on what's called fertility rate. I think when I was a child, and I'm in my mid 50s, it was like 2.6 was a family size, and now it's 1. And especially in the province of British Columbia, it's lower than any other province in the country. So when you have those low birth rates, and you have outward migration, and now you have a cap on immigration, there's no way we're going to grow. And when we look at the number of 5-year-olds, I pulled this from census data. Not all these children attend Cowichan Valley, but this is the number of 5-year-olds that are projected in the Cowichan Valley, potential kindergarten age students moving out over the next 6 years. About 80-something% choose public, some choose homeschool, some choose private. It's in the 80s. We start to get down to these cohorts coming in of around 500 kindergarten students when we used to see 700. And we have cohorts of 700 in the larger grades. They're going to go out. Younger students are going to come in. There's no in-migration into the province of British Columbia or into our community. We don't anticipate we're going to see growth, and neither does the province. So this slide, I'm going to have to describe what the dots are, or what the lines are, because they're impossible. The tall one here, if my mouse follows it, that's Surrey, and this is overall population growth anticipated between now and 2030 without looking at the impacts of non-permanent residents potentially returning home. So they think Surrey is going to grow by about 70,000 people. And you think there's going to be a lot of children with that, and it's going to be interesting when we get to the provincial projections. Here in SD 62, that's Souk, expected to grow by about 17,000 people in the next 5 years. But not Victoria. Victoria is expected to actually shrink. Saanich is expected to shrink. And SD 79, on provincial statistics, is expected to shrink. So we have a ton of building happening here, and I know it's a big local election issue. If we believe the ministry's demographics, who's coming? They're not showing that we're going to grow as a community because we have high mortality, we have mortalities exceeding births, birth rates are down, in-migration is down, and we have out-migration. And I think we saw that particularly in our north zone, the Crofton, Chemainus communities, where the drop this year over last year was unexpected and significant and was likely due to out-migration out of province. So where this slide gets really interesting, and what I'm trying to get to when I'm painting the story of the future of budgeting, there's only 4 districts in the province that are expected to be bigger by 2030, larger than 2030 than they are today. And that is SD 23, the first little bump here, that is Kelowna. SD 35, which represents Langley. SD 40, which is New West, which that one I'm surprised by. And Souk, but not any more than 500 students for Souk. But where are they coming from? SD 61 anticipated to be down by almost 3,500 students. And this isn't necessarily the school district's population, this is the total school age population in that community. So Victoria's student aged, how many kids are in Victoria that could go to school is going to drop by close to 3,500 students per these projections based on birth rates and in-migration rates. So they've got a huge problem. Proportionally, Nanaimo is looking at about 1,700. that's the same issue as SD 79 with 1200. So we're in, if we believe the ministry's projections that they use for their budgeting purposes, for their school building purposes, for why they're building modular schools now and not full-on schools, just because they're not going to be the kids to build. Surrey is anticipated to drop down by almost 1,500 students, even though I showed you a spike of 70,000. So interesting demographics. The province is changing. If SD 79 drops by 1,200, that could be 1,000 students in 5 years for the school district, and that changes things. Like that takes us back to the early 2000s, where we dropped about 200 students a year.
Yeah.
And you move into funding protection, and there's all sorts of other implications around it. And one of the challenges, which I'll talk about with declining enrollment versus growing enrollment, and this is a really simple way to look at it. If there's $9,000 per FTE, and you get 20 new FTE, that generates $180,000 of new money into your grant. But you typically put one teacher in for every 20 students. That's the commitment in the collective agreement. So that costs about $120,000. So you have about $60,000 in that 20 students of growth to do different things, to pay for part of an EA, or add admin time, or extra custodial time, or pay for inflation. Flip that over. And now when you drop 20 students and you drop $180,000 and you save one teacher, where do you find the other $60,000 that you just dropped in funding? Does that kind of make sense, that simple math? So that's what happens in a period of declining enrollment, and that is where we appear to be moving provincially. So I'm not trying to be all doom and gloom. I'm just trying to just paint the picture of this year's enrollment projections.
Can you please explain funding protection?
I'm going to get to that because it's one of my upcoming slides, because we are back in funding protection.
We are.
And what does that mean? And there's a lot on this slide, and this is what the grant looks like. Basically, we projected that we were going to drop by 136 students moving from this year to next year. That we projected we were going to drop a number of designations and ELL learners. And what happens is the government guarantees that you will not receive as a board less than 98.5% of what you received the year before. And when you drop below that threshold, you receive the highlighted number in blue, which is in this case $800,000, $793,000, to allow for the board time to compress your system back. It gets too fast. When you're dropping that kind of revenue that quickly, decisions have to be made around service levels. And so what it also means, so the board is receiving another $800,000 per grant supplement, but it means that 136 students was the wrong estimate. And in fact, the board is only going to drop by 100. Until that $800,000 is paid back, there's no new money, but you have to have the services in. So if there's more designations that come in versus what we had estimated, they don't come with new money until that $800,000 is paid back. And then the new money starts. So when you're budgeting, there has to be a consideration for contingency for growth now, because it no longer is going to just generate additional funding. I'm going to leave that concept with you for a bit, because I don't know if there's going to be any questions around funding protection, but it's significant that this board has entered back into it. Mm-hmm. And probably wouldn't be if there wasn't, if there had been wage increases already in the grant, because the funding would have gone up. But at this time, there's no completed bargaining cycle, and we haven't been budgeting for any increases because we don't know what they are. And they should have, and if they do arrive, they should arrive outside of this and not affect funding protection for this year, but they certainly affect the next year. Mm-hmm. And I'll explain that on my next slide, because this slide shows at the bottom corner on the right that the board is down compared to funding by $515,461. And you might say, well, that's not too bad to drop 136 students, but it's not the true story. Oh. We're on the journey. Well, we're actually not down 515,000. That's the first line item there, because they took the labor settlement funding for the cost of living allowance and the support staff benefits that had previously been negotiated, and they put them in the per pupil. So we're actually down $1.8 million, not $515,000 on grant year over year from the province. it's tricky. And you have to dig deep into the funding formula and fully understand how what is in it, what is contained in the per pupil rate, which is now $9,015 per student, and last year was $8,900. Well, it's gone up because all these things are now in there, and now we're in funding protection, so we don't really realize that growth in that per pupil rate to the extent that we would in another year. So that's the starting point. So now is the bad news.
Even worse news?
Well, where are we at? What is the opening position?
Just push the button, Mr. Sandquist.
And I don't want anybody to panic because we're working on plans for
Push
this.
the button, Mr. Sandquist.
Okay.
I can't read that. Can you make it bigger, please?
I don't think I can, but I'll read it out. Because last time I tried to make it bigger, I lost the slide. So the very first three items on here are the $1.8 million. If it's a positive number, it's a budget pressure. So the provincial funding estimate is down by $515,000. That's a pressure on the budget. The COLA, cost of living allowance, now being in the per pupil rate of $1.1 million, is a cost pressure on the board. Support staff benefits, now being in the per pupil $186,000, that's a cost pressure on the board. So that $1.8 million on this slide is those first three items on that slide. We don't budget until we get an announcement on the FSA. That's what that miscellaneous ministry grant is, so it's a pressure. Miscellaneous revenue, we had a few little, it's little bitsy items in there that we made adjustments for. It's a pressure. Interest revenue, the Bank of Canada making adjustments to the prime lending rate, or affecting the prime lending rate. We believe we need to drop the interest revenues by $300,000 from this year to next year because they're down. And we also have completed Cowichan Secondary, and there was money some holdback. So we had a lot of money in the bank that we hadn't yet paid the contractor. That money is not in the bank now. So those things compound, and we need to drop it by $300,000. Some adjustments around the recording of childcare fees are positive. That helps the budget. And then this year was balanced on $2.9 million. So that's sort of simply very high level. There's $4.685 million that revenues have been adjusted by. Follow that along. Teacher increments. When a teacher moves up the band, they're entitled to an annual increase outside of the percentage increase. So there are 10 steps. Well, no longer 10. Step 0's gone. No, it was 10. It was 11. So teachers move every year based on if they worked a full year. And it's approximately $3,700 per teacher. And it really jumps in the final year. It's a larger amount when you move from step 9 to step 10 or top a grid. And this board has approximately 200 teachers moving through their experience ratings. There's new teachers. When class size and composition came in 2015, 2016, and it was really fully implemented in 16, 17, 80 new teachers were hired to meet the needs. They're moving through the grid, and many of them are hitting that top step now. And many of them, about 18 of them, got their masters between last year and, well, over this year, which is another $8,000 plus per individual. So we're expecting about $908,000 in cost increases on the teachers just moving through their scale, and there's no funding for that. That's not part of any of the compensation that boards receive. That's considered to be an inflationary adjustment. And if it affects the per pupil rate, which is not the per pupil rate, the salary differential, the board receives $1.77 million if our average salary is greater than the average salary in the province. That number going up or down doesn't matter because we're in funding protection. So if we have higher costs, we're not going to receive any money for it. So it's sort of moot. But I do think that one of the areas we'll be able to look at is around our average teacher salary. We know this is fully loaded with everybody that we know today who's moving over to next year. We will have retirements, and they will be replaced by less expensive teachers. We will have people go off on leave who will be replaced by less expensive teachers. We're building now for the full wages, but we know that happens every single year, and we usually come under budget on teacher wages, and we typically are able to go and adjust by a couple $100,000. So that's something we'll be talking about as we move through the budget cycle. We already reduced the budget for the declining enrollment. So that is a combination of teachers that, it's about 12.5 FTE. We had overstaffed this year and were unable to pull back all staff at the secondary level when we had the 140 student drop because they'd already been timetabled. We're pulling those back, and we're pulling back the teachers related to the 136 FTE already. So we're just staying around formula, and that right now has given the funding formula or the staffing formula around 5 FTE in contingency, and that FTE doesn't have to be used just for teachers. It can be used for EAs. It basically means that they're still sitting in the budget in contingency at this point around $600,000 or $700,000. So that's sort of when I talk about needing a contingency, it's already there in this number. I don't think we need to build that in. We also dropped education assistants correspondingly to the number of designations. Same idea as last year. We've just done it right up front because if numbers go down, so do the number of positions. The designations going out in 12 are much higher than K coming in. And then there's a small clerical that I've already done here, which I'll get into more details. I know Adam's here, he's going to want to know what that is. We have enrollment-based formulas at some schools, and we'll get into more details on that. But I'm showing it that we've just gone to formula right at the start to get to what the realistic position is. It doesn't make sense coming in and saying that we're at $6 million shortfall when we're not. And if to leave those in place, that's what it would show. Stat benefits is a cost pressure. There's a new CPP second tier, and that means that any employee who earns more than $70,000 will pay an additional tier on their CPP to $80,000, and that really kicked in this next school year. It's going to come around January, that second tier, which is part of the next budget year. Health benefits. Super hot premiums for next year, $555,000. We thought this was higher earlier when I was talking about it, when we calculate it, because it's offset by some of the enrollment the staffing that we've already taken out. But for health benefits alone, the premiums are going up by almost $550,000, and that is all groups. So that's usage of plans and inflation hitting our premiums, not funded. Retirement benefits. The board have to put away money every single year to pay out collective agreement benefits for employees that retire. And if you were saving for an amount in the future and interest rates dropped, you have to put more money in the bank to have that money in the future. You know, when interest rates are high, what we call the discount rate or the compounding rate, you need less money every year to make sure you have enough money in the future if you're trying to save for a particular target number. So with the drop in interest rates, the board's financial obligation every year now has gone up by $60,000, and that number is now well into the 600s on every year to fund future retirement benefits that are part of collective agreements. Good news, utilities are down about 67,500, and we may look at that even further. This year's trended well, but when I talked about risk and risk in forecasting, we don't want to have too much contingency, but we can't predict what next winter is going to look like. So we have to be cautious around those. Software is up. Funds that have been transferred to capital are down, and then there's a whole ton of little things that we pick up as we go through that add another 211,000. So that's not a good news story, but this is almost the same story as last year. We were out of 3.9 last year, and we're there again. And predominantly, the big pressure is increments and health benefits. Those are collective agreement items. They're contractual and out of the board control. I'm going to move to the next slide because it's hopefully takes a little bit of the pressure off. And so there is surplus. It's not going to last forever. And we've been talking about this. When we finished this budget cycle, we did the 24-25 amended budget, there was $3.9 million left. And I've shown the board in my first presentation on projection, potentially 1.12 coming in, which means that there may be available for the board $5.082 million. And at the decision of the board, you have that available to assist. And I'm just going to throw a hypothetical number out. If you go 2.5, we're looking to find 1.5 million through various means. And we have some ideas, and there's a new strategy which I briefly discussed with the superintendent and Associate Superintendent Margaret Olson, that we will come with later on. Like we have an idea. Like we have a little bit of a possibility that could take a decent piece of that. But that's where we're at. And it came quicker than expected, predominantly based on further enrollment drop, funding protection, no inflation support, and incrementing staff and benefits, really.
Any questions for the Secretary Treasurer? Sorry, Trustee Thorne.
This we've known has been coming for a long time. I've been voiced it more than once. I don't ever want to go into funding protection again because we had to go through a lot of hoops to get out of it. And I don't care what anyone says, funding protection is not nice. It is not nice at all. I think maybe one of the thoughts I have, because we're a nonprofit society, we should be looking for outside grants. I don't know if that makes any sense to anybody else, but it does to me. If there's some dollars out there, we should go after it. They're not always gonna, we can't always expect Jason to have that horseshoe.
I have 3 more slides.
Okay.
That continue to tell the story.
Okay.
And maybe I only bring that up because it does address Trustee Thorne's question or comment a little bit. And the first slide is really that yes, everything you see in blue is enrollment based, the local education agreement funding and the provincial grants. And we are completely reliant on provincial funding, and that's based on the number of students. There are limits to the amount of rentals and lease revenues, and even changing those rates can help, but it isn't significant enough to solve the budget problem. Investment revenues are what they are. We don't get to set the rates. We're not allowed to gamble and put it in the stock market. It has to be in secured. And miscellaneous revenue is small, and you have international student fees, which has mainly restricted by the number of homestay placements and that a community will support from time to time. So there really aren't a lot of options around revenue generation. It is mainly provincial, and then as we start to look at, if hypothetically the board has to find $1.5 million, the pieces of this pie are not big enough anywhere. Still, if you go from the blues are the borders of staff, like employee benefits to teachers and everything under, that's staffing. That's 90% of the budget. There isn't $1.5 million in utilities, or supplies. Like we're not cleaning schools or putting fuel in the buses or having nails for the operations department or art supplies or, other school supplies, photocopying supplies. It isn't in insurance. There isn't $1.5 million there. And it isn't in services. That mainly services is legal fees and audit fees, and the big one there is the tuition requirement for the students that are taking dual credit courses. And unfortunately, it will have an impact on the people at some degree. It just can't be found all painlessly at all.
And Mr. Sacklis, just for history benefit, trustees, we actually thought maybe we could take pieces of every one of those pies, and we did. And the damage to the district was horrendous because programs weren't rolling out because we didn't have seniors. We didn't have a full senior staff team. We had one HR. We had classrooms that were sometimes cleaned because of custodial cuts. We thought that our only option was to do that, and it didn't work, and things started to fall apart really quickly. So just to say that that's history. It's what we did when we had to cut $7 million and it did not work.
Yeah, and it's a tricky exercise of balancing all the basic infrastructure requirements with the the educational requirements. So these are the pies, and it is complex. Busing. There's 4,000 riders, and we know. What that means to getting kids to school and how many cars it is on the road, for instance, if transportation were to be reduced. And we also know, I'm not going to go into closed reports, but we know the impacts of changing policy around busing and what those impacts are. Operations and maintenance, that's custodial and heat and basic building maintenance and technology support fits in there. District admin, that's payroll and accounting and just some core functions. And then instruction is the most important thing of all. So it's a balancing act of trying to figure out where can these pies be adjusted with the least impact and still meeting the board's strategic priorities. Which will be the focus as we move ahead, and we'll start that work next Tuesday. And that's my final slide. So it's a very high level. We're not in the details yet. We're not into options yet. I'm just trying to give you and I started with demographics because I think we need to expect that we are going to decline and continue to decline, and that is what the province is expecting for all of us, other than 4 school districts. It's highly challenged every time we say we're going to decline. Everybody knows there's babies everywhere, and they know so-and-so, and there's houses being built, and they're going to be full of kids, and they're all family building, and they're not. They're not yet.
Mr. Shankless, thank you to you and your team for putting this all together, and Superintendent, thank you for having you and your team having conversations. And I know that our next steps are going to be crucial ones. I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't worse. So, because I thought it was going to be, I did. So thank you for that. We're basically in the same boat we were last year. So that at least gives us, as we talked about, maintaining instead of cutting. It looks like we'll be able to maintain for a little while longer. So with some changes.
Well, we do have to find $1.5 million, and that's not going to be easy. No. We'll be bringing back reminders of the ads from the last few years. Well, those will have to be some things will have to be considered.
Yep. Just thank you very much for what you've done to get us to this.
Yeah, and I think the budget team we got to this place that kind of on the last day of the first week of spring break, and had a really good understanding of the grant and of the implications of all the cost pressures. We did a lot of testing work. I know Claudia had to leave, but I certainly have, thanks to her and Carrie and to Naomi, who did a lot of the groundwork to get us to today. And now we know, and now we can start to work over the next month towards a balanced budget. So thank you for your attention.
I have Trustee Croffield has a question.
Actually, more of a comment. So, I'm not trying to fool anybody here, but my recollection from the most recent encounter with funding protection was that we also had a government who was making additional cuts to education, which seemed to completely compounded the. I don't know. Is that your recollection? That there seemed to be, because I remember showing up one day and being told, "Oh, you're getting cut $200,000, but you still have to spend it on the thing that you were required that we gave it to you for." And
Well, we came out of funding protection before the 2014 board was elected. The 2014 board wasn't funding protection.
It's probably more challenging when you come out of funding protection than it is going into funding protection, because you come out and that funding disappears. And it can disappear quickly. And we had just come out around 2014, 2013 from an earlier round of being in it. And our funding protection here got up into the millions of dollars. And then that becomes that becomes a challenge when half the school district is, or half the province is in funding protection, and Surrey's going, but we're growing and all this money is going to these smaller school districts who are declining, and where's our share?
Yeah.
And so you begin to get that conflict that starts to happen with the funding formula and the grant. I think we're going to be seeing a lot of our neighbors enter funding protection, if not, maybe shortly after us, if not already. I've looked at the island, and I know Gulf Islands is in, but they've been in for years. But I don't think that others are that far away from being in a similar situation. And so the question then remains, how long does government maintain that funding protection before they just revise the formula and sort of equalize things? And I don't think that's overnight. It hasn't been, but it starts, funding protection alone starts to put pressure on the formula. But also, provincially, the province is projecting the whole system to be down by 3,500 students next year. We said 136. That's not that far off from what our share of the province is. What you hope is that in the past, and I don't think we're going to see this again given the finances of government, but in the past, when the final enrollment comes in and that 3,500 students that they think the enrollment has dropped by and they're kind of holding back on funding, they've distributed it out, and we used to call them the Easter Bunny grants, and that was the fund name trustees had for them because they would arrive at the end of government's fiscal, March 31st. Things are okay now. We have this money, and now everybody gets a share of it, and we couldn't spend it by the end of the year. We always had to say, well, that's why we have a surplus, and leave us alone. We're going to use it next year. I don't know if we'll see that again. It's been years since we've had those, but Trustee Schmidt would remember them from past board experience. Yeah. Okay, I have two more quick items, and then moving into 2 action items. National Food Program funding, there was a big announcement, and this will result in an additional $180,000 to the Board of Education that will supplement the Feeding Futures Fund. So this was a federal initiative, and Feeding Futures is around $990,000 for next year, and now we're moving up by another $180,000 and going to have discussions with how to allocate that. So I think that's a positive.
Trustee Croft.
In past years, we have been required, which I don't quibble with, but we have been required to send a fair amount of Feeding Futures funding, who made that up, over to Nourish. So is that $180,000 come with that requirement or expectation, or do we know yet?
It's not a requirement either for Nourish.
Okay.
It's a local decision to do that.
So I wouldn't say it was entirely up to us, but okay.
It's up to the school district
Yeah, well, okay.
to determine. But yeah, they have a very major presence.
Yeah. No, I get that, but it has been.
9.14 is really just a public reminder or notify the board that all of the board's employees who wish to vote on election day need 3 hours of uninterrupted voting time. The federal election is April 28th. It will end at 7 p.m., which means 4 p.m. is the cutoff for work that day should employees choose to exercise their voting right. And there aren't that many staff that work beyond 4 p.m. in their schedule, but it's just for the board's information. I'm going to move now into policy 7, board operation. I brought this policy forward after discussion with superintendent and the board chair, as there is a requirement in the new Bill 40 for the board's agenda to contain an item, a standing item for Indigenous Education Councils. And so what we're asking is the board to amend their policy so this item will remain on the agenda, whether there's an update to give or not to give, it becomes part of your standing agenda. And that's why we added 3.817 and 3.818 and 3.819. So there could either be information items, and there may be items of action as well that come out of recommendations from the council. And so that is here with the motion on your agenda.
Any questions before I put the motion on the table? That the Board of Education of School District 79, Cowichan Valley adopts the revised policy 7, board operations as amended. Moved by Trustee Lezay, seconded by Trustee Sousa. All those in favor? Thank you, folks. 9.2.2.
Okay, I don't think I have this electronically, but everybody should have it now in their packages or on their blotter. So sorry for the gallery, but I will read what this is. I'm gonna find my desktop copy. I lost it. Thank you, Claire.
You might have given it to me.
I'm happy to announce that the 5-year capital plan submission came in over the break after the agenda had been submitted. And this is the minor capital project award. So actually there isn't any major here. All minor capital. So Bench Elementary, Drinkwater Elementary, and Mill Bay Elementary are receiving roofing upgrades in the amount of $1.5 million. Bench is getting year 2 of a multi-year phase HVAC upgrade of $750,000. So that's heating and ventilation system. Exciting for Coheman Elementary that they are the recipients of a $200,000 universally accessible playground. And the board receives one of those every year or two to replace playground equipment. And there are 2 school buses that have been approved. They are both internal combustion engines. That is where the funding starts. And I suspect, based on the buses that they're needing to be replacing, they'll likely be internally combustible engine buses that will replace the older buses. So that requires motion, a bylaw of the board, which is included at the back of this package. It's a capital plan 2025-2026. And there's 4 motions related to that. So in order for funding to arrive on those projects, the board needs to adopt the bylaw.
Any questions? Nope. Okay, so I guess I'll get started. That the Board of Education of School District 79, Cowichan Valley gives first reading to capital bylaw number 2025-2026, CPSD 7901, capital plan 2025-2026, moved by Trustee Thorne, seconded by Trustee Sousa. All those in favor? Thank you. That the Board of Education of School District 79, Cowichan Valley gives second reading to capital bylaw number 2025-2026-CPSD 79-01, capital plan 2025-2026, moved by Trustee Lise, seconded by Trustee Thorne. All those in favor? That the Board of Education of School District 79, Cowichan Valley consider 3 readings of capital bylaw number 2025-26 CPSD 79-01, capital plan 2025-26 at this meeting, moved by Trustee Sousa, seconded by Trustee Croft. All those in favor? Thank you. That the Board of Education of School District 79, Cowichan Valley gives third and final reading to capital bylaw number 2025-26 CPSD 79-01, capital reserve plan 2025-2026, moved by Trustee Croft, seconded by Trustee Lise. All those in favor? Thank you, friends. All right, thank you, Mr. Sandquist. No committee announcements by organizations. Can everybody take a quick look at the schedule of upcoming meetings? Make sure. So Trustee Sousa, you're at DSAC, and I'm at DPAC. Everything looks like it's there, friends? Hearing nothing. No correspondence, new business. Question period, Mr. Sandquist, do we have anybody online?
No, we don't.
Oh, but we have a question from the gallery. That was swift and well done. From the DPAC chair, does it qualify for a question?
It does, and I have an answer.
With federal election and by-election for North Cowichan coming up, has there been any requests made to utilize school spaces? Mr. Sandquist.
Yes, there has been. And the board, I know this created some issues in the last federal election, and the board is required to provide these spaces under the direction of the province of British Columbia. There are 5 schools that will be polling stations. 2 of them will be advanced polls. I don't know that we've communicated with the schools yet, so I would like to not quite say which schools they are, but there will be 2 advanced polls, one central and one in the south zone. That will be over the Easter weekend. So we, or the board, are able to, will receive rental funds from Elections Canada, and we'll have reimbursement of the custodial costs necessary to open those facilities at 6 a.m. and close those facilities at 8 p.m. Polling is from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And on Monday, the 28th, April 28th, that is a school day. And I know that will create challenges with parent pickup and drop-off as it has in the past, and access to schools. So we are going to be speaking with those schools and working on some plans around that. It was certainly an issue in the last federal election. We can have more information for DPAC once we've communicated with the schools.
Excellent. Thank you
Been
for
selected.
All right, and since there's no other questions, motion to adjourn. Moved by trustee Sousa, seconded by trustee Leader. Thank you very much, everybody. Have a good evening.